Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's nice to be here with you. Um, what you see on the screen is a drop of water, and I think that's very appropriate for today. The power of a drop of water, especially when it continues to hit regularly. But welcome. I'm Nicholas White from the Smart Building Collective. Smart Building Collective is founded in science, refined by practice, constantly optimized by our network of experts. And today we're proud and excited to be sitting with Thijs van Tilburg from Woodsense. And he's an expert in leak detection. In the sensors that they build are all about how do you stop big problems from happening before they even start. So he's the co-founder and the CCO of Woodsense, and we're going to learn all about what they do today. But on high level, it's monitoring and moisture conditions within the built environment, and they do it both for flat roofs and for wood construction, making sure that we capture leaks before they happen. And it's exciting. We're excited to have him here and to talk about it. First, before we go into that, we're going to talk about the SBC framework for a second, just to get everybody back on in tune with how we certify buildings, how we certify solutions. The Woodsense solution just received its solution certification against this framework, and the framework really breaks things down into practical aspects where we can really drill down into the challenges and the results that we're actually trying to get out of our real estate. So building usage is all about how the asset is being utilized, thinking about occupancy sensors and amenity usage, how people are moving about and accessing and using the different aspects of an asset. Building performance is all about sustainability, energy performance, water performance, but also your maintenance and management, how well the solutions and the technology are performing. Building environment is all about the health and well-being of an environment. So thinking about air quality and sound and light, and how do we make sure that aspects are healthy. Safety and security is about physical and digital safety, making sure that we're cyber secure, making sure that the data is secure, but also that people are physically safe in the environment as well. User behavior and collaboration is all about how people are interacting with the building, but also interacting with each other. Very important to make sure that people can actually use the environment in a meaningful way. And all of that is brought together with connectivity and infrastructure, because without connectivity and infrastructure, the whole thing falls over, of course. And integrative design. How can we, with the least amount of technology, maximize the value in all of these areas? And this is a fascinating module within the Smart Building certification, because we see some buildings doing that with 35 technologies. We see some buildings doing that with 5 technologies, and everything in between. So it's a really dynamic and interesting space. But this module, this framework, allows us to celebrate the things that are going really well and drill down into the areas of opportunity, and of course constantly be learning and working together to pull best practices out of smart building. So without further ado, I'm going to pull Thijs onto the stage, and I think he's already here, and then we're going to dive into it. Hello.
Hello, nice to be here.
Nice to see you. Nice to have you here. How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. I just came from top of the roof of Danish Mary Elizabeth Hospital, where we have a lot of sensors in, and yeah, it feels good to find damages and prevent damages on a children's hospital.
I can imagine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Really nice. So let's start with the story of Woodsense. When did it start? Where are you guys now? And what is it exactly that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. We started 4 years ago by creating sort of with a vision of eliminating waste, eliminating use of resources in construction industry. We did so by saying, okay, why don't we why don't we treat our buildings as we treat our cars or our bridges, by saying like, if there's a mistake in the building, it should tell us. So that was the basic idea. And as you can hear, we started very much on wooden constructions, and hence the name Woodsense, where we decided to sort of solve the barrier of moisture damages, which is like by far the biggest problem in all buildings. When it comes to damages, around 80% of damages in buildings occur because of moisture in some aspect. It can either be, from the outside on the climate shield, that's where we focus, or it can also be from the inside on pipes and stuff like that bursting. And there's other really great solutions for that.
But
and that's 80, sort of
80%. That's crazy. That's a
big
number. Yeah.
It's a big number, and it's something that, because it's, water is really tricky. So no one has really, worked on a methodological way to sort of fix it. They just, accepted that there was part of the reality, and just kept building. And that's sort of what we try to sort of change. And then a year ago, we made another use case for our system. So not only wooden constructions, which is still very much going. We're on most of the large wooden timber projects in Denmark, and all in 14 countries. But we started focusing more into flat roofs because we saw this need of. It was just more in our network, everyone had just accepted that a flat roof was a leaky roof. I mean, there's so many great things about a flat roof, because you can often build a little higher. You can put in all your installation gear and stuff like that. You can put in there. You can put solar panels on top, or you can make a terrace or something like that. So there's so much benefit of a flat roof, but everyone has just accepted, well, water will enter because you build a bathtub of several thousand square meters, and if you leave a small hole like this, water comes in very slowly, and then after time it will be very, very big, and then at some point you will have a lot of problems and you don't know where they arise from, and that's what we're trying to fix.
Yeah, I mean, what's so interesting always is that where the water is coming in isn't necessarily where you see the problem, right? It's often completely in a different part of the building.
Yeah,
and, I mean, and these roofs are massive, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. Because a roof construction, or in general a construction, but like a roof construction consists of so many layers. So there's so many even layers where the water can, land on, and then it just, spreads. So it's about finding and then if you look at the lowest layer, that's where it will start dripping at some point. But it's really hard to fix something if it's been running for 50 meters. So it's really about, localizing, okay, where did it enter? Because that's where we need to fix something, because otherwise the problem will persist over and over again.
Yeah. So how does the Woodsense solution tackle that?
Basically, we create a whole grid of sensors in the roof structure. We identify, or we assess the roof and find out, okay, how critical is this roof, depending on the amount of penetrations on the climate shield, stuff like that, and also the use case both on top and below. That means if you have a hospital like today, or a pharmaceutical factory, or something really high risk, then of course you have something to protect underneath your roof that's worth protecting, even more than classic office. And then on top of it, if you want to build solar panels, green roofs, terraces, well, then you also have a higher risk of something happening, and also a much more difficult way of finding leaks. So what we do is that we sort of, depending on the roof, we build in X amount of sensors, typically 1 per 25 square meters. And then we make sort of an interactive sort of roof surveillance. So they will all be sending in real time, all the time, telling us what the moisture is in all the different areas. And basically, one of the most used features of our system is, for example, a video saying, okay, if there is an alarm that goes on, that will be sent to our customers, they can also go in and say, okay, now we've received an alarm. That's sort of our confirmation that there is a leak. But then what do you do with a leak? So therefore, by having our platform that can then, make videos of the period before that or period after that, then how has the water been moving, because that's just as important. And by that way, you sort of have a quick overview of how the health of your roof, which areas to be aware of, where have the water or the damage spread, something like that.
Yeah, so it triangulates where the heaviest moisture is versus where it's less moist.
Yeah, exactly. And very often, since we know which critical places at the roof construction are, then we can just place sensors at those critical. So it's often very easy to sort of find, because then you have an alarm on a sensor which is next to an insulation. To something, an insulation thing that breaches the membrane. So therefore, we can say, okay, with like 80% likeliness, it's probably tightening around that the membrane there that's been going too fast. So there's a small hole there.
Yeah, interesting, really interesting. So if we look at our module about building performance and how building performance is the asset performing on its promises, right? And when it comes to a flat roof or a tight building envelope, the promise is that water is not going to get in. But you all beg to differ. Otherwise, you wouldn't have built a business that you have built. But how big of a problem is this? So for instance, how many buildings are you guys in, and what kind of issues are you guys uncovering?
It's a huge problem, to be honest. I would never build a flat roof myself. That's the first thing I tell people, our customers: don't build a flat roof, but if you do, please monitor it. So we're in around, say, 160, 170 buildings.
What a progress in 4 years. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's I think especially like it's the size of the buildings that really matters for us. It's just now it's hospitals, it's critical infrastructure that we're monitoring, which is just a huge step for us, because now it really feels like there's a big difference there. And the problem is, like, for example, the project I just came from, I think we've seen 7 or 8 mistakes. They've built maybe 2,000 square meters out of the 7,000 that they're going to lay, and we've already found and bettered 7 approximately damages. It's a lot of damages for 2,000 square meters. And basically, it's not a problem, because the thing is, if you find a damage in the construction phase, well, then you just fix it. It's quite easy. You ask your roofer to replace 1-2 cubic meters of insulation, and then you tighten wherever was not tight enough, and then you progress, so you don't get delayed. You have a much higher chance of when you're actually starting the building, where it actually should start to perform when the residents move in, or like it's going into use. Then you have a so much higher chance of having a tight roof that you don't have those drips all over.
Yeah. So you guys are involved in the construction phase, and you guys keep going in the in-operation phase as well, right?
Yeah. So we have a battery life of approximately 10 years. And that's where most damages happen. They happen typically during construction in the first 5 years. So it's those are the critical years to monitor. And that's why we've sort of chosen a battery-driven solution, because it's really, really easy to install. And that's a big thing, because otherwise, if you have a grid of some sort that with wires, and then the installation phases are so complicated, then people will often choose not to do it. It has to be sort of, you take a sensor out of a box, you place it, you take a picture, and you scan it, a QR code, and that's it.
Okay.
So we
and
typically are building.
They go in the roof, right?
So
the question you do get often is, when that battery does die, how does that go?
Well, you can either let it die out and leave it there. If you're talking one small sensor like this on 25 square meters of roof, it's okay. But
Yeah.
you can also, it's also fairly easy for a roofer to go up and replace it. You can just take you have to have a roof drill that just
Yeah.
drills a hole of 10 centimeters wide. You put it up and you replace it with a new one. So it's actually quite easy if you want to sort of keep maintaining,
Yeah.
your monitoring. That's also doable.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. And basically now you're talking about very much about building performance. So I'm like in that, I would say that's very much after construction or in use. And basically having that overview of saying, well, if there's a problem with the building, then the roof is performing. We can monitor it live. Well, how is it performing? How is it affecting the rest of the building? Could we foresee some mold growth problems, or should we expect water to come in? Is there something to sort of so having that it's the most critical area of your building. That's the roof. That's really where it protects.
And let's talk about some of the numbers when you see damages, right? Because like if you catch the damage when it's localized and it's quite small, the damage is minimal. Like you just said, you replace a little insulation, you fix the roof.
2 hours of work and maybe 200 euros of materials.
And so what are the ones when they go to when you don't do anything about it, and then all of a sudden it starts dripping down the hallway?
Well,
what have you
now
seen
I said
stories?
Yeah, we're in a few hospitals in Denmark, as I said. But there's one we are not, which is one in Odense, Denmark's third largest city. They have a roof they have a building larger than Pentagon, and they have a roof of 55,000 square meters.
Oh, wow.
There, it's been a longer process, so we didn't even exist when they started. But they just had to sort of tear down 33,000 square meters of roof, remove it. They have 600 rooms that has to be sanitized for mold, and they sort of have to redo 33,000, so like 60% of the total square meters. They have to redo all over. So it's one of the largest hospitals, if not the largest, in Denmark. It's maybe a year's delay. It's 100 million euros in damages, and lawsuits flying back and forth between contractors and building owner. I mean, that's obviously the worst case, but it's a very real case, and it's unique because it's that big, but it's not unique to have to take up 60% of your roof.
Definitely worst case, but it's
astronomical. And then
crazy.
It's really crazy.
With smart buildings, right? One of the biggest challenges we have is that the stakeholder map is so fragmented and everything is in silos. Who's your audience? Like, who's your buyer? And are you plugging into the greater kind of smart building system at the moment?
Yeah. Well, to plug into, like, we can easily plug into other systems. We have open REST APIs and stuff like that. So obviously, it's like when you're a new company, you need to sort of be open with your data, share it. Don't be one of those assholes from 20 years ago who didn't share anything, right? So that's obviously just a given.
I hope there's no children watching this.
Sorry.
I don't think there's children.
No, I think we're good. I hope so. And what was the first question? That was who's our stakeholders? Yeah, I mean, we have customers in all sort of layers of the building pyramid, but definitely the building owners are our core customer group. Basically, because they will overtake the building at some point. So they want to be sure that they overtake a roof that is healthy, that is tight, that doesn't give them problems later on, that will detect problems first, like as they come. In theory, they sometimes complain that it's not really fair, because it's really they're paying for our system to find someone else's mistakes that they actually are liable for.
Yeah.
But the fact is that, I mean, then they're found too late, or it becomes a lawsuit, or it becomes a delay, and it always ends up with some part of the bill is also end up with the building owner, because you end up making settlement. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's just a very big headache that's removed.
Do you see that because what we're also seeing, right, with smart building is that there's kind of new business models evolving all the time, and new like suppliers are taking on the smart building platforms to deliver better facility management or whatever. Do you see the roofers or people who are kind of supplying the roof getting involved yet and saying, hey, why don't we put this in, and then we know kind of that everything's working, and we'll catch it for them before it even starts leaking?
Mm. I hope it's the future, I would say. Right now,
Or is that just a
it's
new idea that I've planted that says, hey, that's interesting?
no, I think it's definitely something we talk to. We really want to, be integrated in, whoever is just exposed to a flat roof. They should sort of um, help smart systems get into that construction part. But it's not something that's very often right now. I mean,
No.
the construction industry is very conservative, right? And that's for many reasons. But one is that their budget margins are so low; they earn so little on a project, that extra costs are annoying, or like always annoying, of course. But like it actually makes a dent in your profits, even though they don't, and then they don't really think about what can they prevent, and why do they have so small project profits. That's yeah. So that's one thing. So I don't see it, but I think a lot of things is going on. I mean, I know there are people working on it. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
to
you're
integrate.
absolutely. I think you're absolutely right that it's conservative, and it's taking a long time for that transformation to happen. And they've always done
Hmm.
things a certain way. Why would we do it differently?
Yeah,
And I do think the change is coming, right? I think that the
yeah.
demands are there. Once you have one or two that are doing it, then everybody has to do it.
Hmm.
Why wouldn't you want
Yeah,
that assurance
yeah.
that it's going well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then in most other industries, you don't have a time of, let's say, a few years from idea of saying, let's build a building, to you have built it and you have had it for a year or two. That time span is most often 2, 3, 4 years, right? So
Yeah.
that's one frame of experience that a builder or a building owner gets. So like from idea to actually result, you have 5 years. Whereas if you build a car, or if you build a more or less any other product, then the time of manufacturing is very short. And so you also have instant feedback on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's why the construction industry sometimes are a slow adopter. It's not because people want to be slow adopters, but they need proof that something is working, and that takes a few years every time.
Well, we also have a massive debate, what you already hinted to, with the owner having to pay for it and saying, "Oh, do I really need to pay for this to check somebody else's work?" But
Yeah.
there's a massive debate of where does the cost sit, where does the
Mm.
value sit, and who should be the one paying the bill, right?
Yeah, yeah. For sure. Like our system should be divided out by 2, 3, 4 stakeholders. They all benefit, and that's
Yeah.
it's a really annoying thing to have to pass a check to someone, and then everyone hopefully are happy. But like, there's one who's a little sour because they got to pay.
Yeah, yeah. What we see in general smart building talk, right? You have owner, developer investments and costs. You have occupier, user investment costs, and I think now we're starting to see a third pillar showing up, which is that supplier that says, "Hey,
Mm.
I want this because it's going to make me able to deliver better value for you." So that's really
Yeah.
exciting. But then there's this shared cost, and I think you're hinting to that. That's where the equation and the way of thinking needs to really come together. And I don't think we're there yet. I think that's coming, but it's still
No.
early.
Yeah. We haven't solved it either. So we
Yeah,
tried in the beginning, and then we had to choose to become more cynical and talk to whoever ends up with the bill anyway, the building owner. Yeah, because yeah, we solved their headache, and that's fine, and they're always happy with it. It's just unfair that the others are benefiting so much from it as well. Or
Yeah.
it's not unfair, but it feels a little weird.
Yeah, it does, and I think this isn't the only system that's dealing with that challenge, and I think that's
No.
what we're experimenting and experiencing together, trying to find better ways of doing it in a way.
Yeah.
So when you guys integrate into other systems and you guys push data to other platforms, is that being demanded a lot now? Are you being put into other systems, or are you still being kind of treated standalone?
We're mainly being treated standalone, but we're selling to a lot of projects who have plans to sort of push us into other systems.
Okay.
But like on large scale projects, it's really been the last 1.5 years that really sort of where we've started pushing several hundred sensors in buildings, and that's where the other also think about, okay, what can we do to then we'll have one collected system or collective system in the end. So we have a lot of people who are planning to do so, but right now we're standalone. Typically, there's only once or twice it has happened, and I actually don't know that much about those projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. And I think that's the future is more and more kind of integration in those overall platforms. Otherwise, you're a platform that somebody needs to log into and check and make sure.
Yeah, yeah. So what we do right now is that we sort of try to make our alarms as intelligent as possible. So we've created a system where you only have to react if you have a notification on your email.
Yeah.
Then
Okay.
there's an explanation on what has happened, where has it happened, with a link to the sensor, which encapsulates the sort of the problem. So basically, we try to make it easy for our customers not to use our system more than they have to when there's a damage.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. And do you guys have other value cases or ways of using your sensor to inform other parts of the building?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a project now with like little less than 400 sensors, and then we are in, I think, 8 different parts of the building. So we're in the roofs, we're in the terraces, we are in the facades at specific
Oh, wow.
places. We're in the technical shafts, we're in the elevator shafts because they have a lot of water damage as well. And of course, there are some dumb solutions to that, which would just be a noise. But we can much more have a nuanced picture of when stuff is going on because we use like AI algorithms to sort of find find damages that a either or meter won't find. Then we're in, yeah, it's a wooden building, so we're also in the beams and the decks. Yeah, so I think eight different places in total, but it
So
often starts with the flat roof for us, just because then we see the building and say, okay, have you thought of here and here and here? You also have critical areas because yeah, roofs probably they are around 35-40%, I would estimate, of all water damages, but that means there's still plenty to go around and
yeah.
to be covered against. Yeah.
And so I'm going to jump before we go to the health aspect because I think there is
Mm,
a really important health aspect to talk about.
mm,
I was going to talk about kind of the connectivity. So you guys are battery operated sensors, so that's how you
hmm.
get the electrical connectivity. How do you guys get the
The data.
mobile connectivity, the data connectivity?
Yeah, so we're using a LoRaWAN network.
Okay.
Um, so that's yeah. So basically, our sensors and the gateways they just find each other automatically, and then the gateway comes with a SIM card built in, so that will automatically just send to the cloud for us. So basically, the gateway just need to have the being plugged into power, and then we're good to go.
So you guys place gateways. It's LoRaWAN, so it's actually has nothing to do with their own network. It's a network that you all create for your sensors.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So place 1, 2, maybe 3 if it's a very big building. Yeah, sensors or
I
gateways.
think
Sorry.
I think that's really important for our audience to understand is when you think about cybersecurity and you think about
Mm.
data access, these types of things. When you
Yeah.
have a standalone system like this, where it's LoRaWAN and you have created kind of an isolated, that risk comes way down.
Yeah. I'm not an expert in this field, but we had one project with the building department of Denmark. They were building a new head office that's a hybrid office. So one day it might be the taxation office or the police headquarters. So therefore, they're really keen on like having high end security. So they had a top tier consultancy company, to check our solution and LoRaWAN's security, just to make sure that no one is able to hack it, that everything goes, if it goes, when it goes by protocol, it's super safe.
Yeah.
So without knowing much about it, I know that we passed that test with flying colors. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
And
Yeah.
what we always talk about with the smart building certification is that there's different levels in data, right? Different criticalness within data. Of course,
Yeah.
if it's about credit card information and stuff like that, it has a whole different level of sensitivity
Yeah.
than CO2 in a room.
Yeah.
And
Our
leakage detection. There's not a whole lot of private data there.
No, we measure three types of data. We measure humidity, temperature, and wood moisture. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's not very sensitive, not compared to like people have their coffee machines or their phones or their printers and whatnot of smart
Yeah.
appliances inside the actual building and not very far away from people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels
We have
like.
go ahead.
No. It feels sometimes. It feels weird to being having to answer all these really critical questions about security sometimes when we're like, have you also checked your coffee machine? Or
Yeah.
like, because they know what you're talking about for sure.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a question here that says, I love the car analogy. Do you see the same kind of regulations being put on buildings that cars went through with their kind of dashboard evolutions and just the different regulations around cars?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much, thank you about for the compliment, but I don't know how the process of, regulations happened, but I know that after having worked with especially these flat roofs for the past year and finding so many damages, we find out damages in all buildings. We're sure that now that you start collecting data, you start sharing things that in Denmark and also in the Netherlands, UK and stuff like that, it will become mandatory. We see that it's in Austria and Switzerland. They've started saying, okay, if you build a flat roof, you need some kind of monitoring system for it. That's
Wow.
sort of it's starting there. Maybe not as a full-on regulation, but it's a sort of a hard, what's that called? Yeah, recommendation basically. And that's how the construction industry works. First, you have good best practices, and then you become like, okay, now there's a building code that you have to sort of live up to, and the next layer is having a standardized by EU or the national governments to sort of have to certain standards to reach. I think it'll be there. I just don't know if it will be in 5 years or 10 years. Hopefully in 5.
Once we have the capability, why wouldn't we do it, right? It makes complete sense.
Yeah. It just seems, also just from a sustainability angle, we all talk about sustainability, and actually very, very few places you actually talk about sustainability and damages. But damages are, in Denmark, 10% of all the money that goes into the construction industry is going to repair damages. And of these, 80% are moisture, right? So that means 8% of the whole construction industry is repairing for moisture damages. That's the sustainability behind that is unaccounted for. So it's crazy.
And you're throwing out all that stuff that was damaged. The sustainability.
Yeah. There was a report from, I think it was Sintef, a Norwegian science institution, that said that if you have a minor damage and then they in a single family house, If that minor damage becomes just moderate, just developing a little bit, then that damage alone accounts for 2% of the embodied carbon in that in the house. And if it becomes a major damage, it's 12% of the embodied carbon in the whole house that is required to dry out and replace material for that one damage. And that's per damage. So we find maybe 10 damages in that building. And if we find them, then they're minor damage because, you go up, you replace, and you close the hole, whatever, the leak. That's counts for nothing. But if you let be, then at some point you have 10 centimeter of water that will at some point just spill into the building, and then so I think once we become much more aware or get a holistic picture of sustainability, I think it will be a requirement. Yeah.
Well, and okay, so that's the sustainability piece. I think that's a nice segue into our module on indoor environment and health, because I think regulations are coming for those two reasons, right? It's about sustainability and it's about human life and health. So what are you guys seeing as far as your research and your thoughts around the health implications of not taking care of this?
Yeah, it's a complicated area. So I would say I wouldn't go as far as research for our case. I mean, because that's taking that's a big load. But what we can see is like integrated in our system, for example, is a mold growth sort of indicator, for example. Basically finding or spotting if there is a critical situation around one of our sensors, then it will indicate, okay, now within a certain time frame, we will have a mold can sort of start growing. And mold can be, for some, it's very harmless. Also, if it's some part of the building, it might not be problematic. But the thing is, it's for some are super sensitive. There's just a case right now in the UK where the court has ruled that a kid died because of mold. So that's a really it's a big scandal right now because people have just been building and been shrugging their shoulders because mold is undefined. But now they've sort of decided
whose problem is it?
Yeah. So it can be really problematic for some. And also, and by ensuring the building envelope, that's basically where a lot of the mold would sort of have their origins. So it's often not where it's problematic, but it's where the water goes after it comes in through the building envelope. Then it goes into the walls or the floors and stuff like that, and then it becomes really dangerous.
Well, and this data that you all can now provide places accountability as well. I mean, it makes it clear as to where the problem is. Before it was like, oh, well, we don't know what the problem is. But this pinpoints, right? It says exactly what it is, because I think when you put together a roof as well, sometimes it's not one party. It's an installation company that put in a solar panel incorrectly and punctured a hole. This kind of can pinpoint it immediately.
Yeah. So it's basically just preventing your building from becoming unhealthy. I mean, it's really just protecting the shell that shields from the outside environment.
And I think the data is probably getting pretty interesting as well, because different climates attract or create molds in different ways, right? I think. And so, how many countries are you guys in, and where are you seeing that data?
We're in 14 countries right now. Obviously, a lot of it in Denmark, but also France and UK is quite big for us. And well, we mainly see that, for example, Denmark is a very complicated country, which is good to start here because we have very high humidity. So a lot of buildings have problems in Denmark. We haven't actually filtered that much countries towards each other yet. That's because that for us it's always important to have a meaningful sample size to start doing so. and a sample size is also because if there's one in the roof somewhere in a facade in another country, they're not. That's apple and potatoes. You can't compare. So I think we've had some really cool studies from Faroe Islands. There
Okay.
it's really, really wet. And the Faroe people, they're like, no, it's great. It's such a good building. And they've had and we're looking at the data and seeing, whoa, that's the wettest building by far we've ever seen. And that's quite kind of interesting to see. Okay, but because water is not always just water. It's depends on where it goes and how it's removed afterwards. Okay, water is a problem if it keeps being in the materials, but if it goes somewhere else and it's aired out or vented out somewhere, then it's okay.
It's interesting you say that, right? In Amsterdam, a lot of the houses in Amsterdam are on wood beams, and those wood beams are completely covered with water, and
Yeah,
they have been for hundreds of years. And the problem is when the water goes away and comes back and goes away and comes back, and it's that
yeah,
changing environment that really starts the
yeah,
rot problem. That's really
yeah.
interesting because I think
Start
water,
to rot. Yeah, and also it starts. Then the beams also start cracking. It's a constant drying up and down. That sort of gives also unstable say load bearing capabilities. Um, but it's like if you want to, there is also we have some customers in New Zealand because they have a long history of mold growth problems. It's called leaky building syndrome because
yeah.
they for 20 years they had the wrong building code, so they had the wrong ventilation system in their facades.
Oh wow.
Some people thought it was nice, and I think actually Canada had the same, and a lot of Commonwealth countries have shared sort of similarities, but in Canada and New Zealand it was worst because they really, yeah, if you build the wrong ventilation and you don't air out your constructions, well, then it's problematic. So the same problem was not in the UK, for example, but with the same building code.
So it's more of like condensation rather than leakage.
Yeah. That, in that case, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not something I've dived into that much, but I should remember seeing, okay, it's so specific geographically which
Yeah.
problems. We had a problem in Denmark called MGO. There was a building material called MGO, and they rotted and fell down in Denmark. It was a huge scandal. Many companies had to go bankrupt because of it. But in Sweden and Germany, just below and above us, they building with the same material with no problems at all. So it's like
Yeah.
1 or 2% humidity that just affects the Danish system so negatively. And I think
Interesting.
that's
So,
yeah,
and I think
it's
that the data is only going to become more and more, and the correlations with that data are going to be, yeah, more and more
yeah.
useful.
So now back when that scandal happened, you couldn't really use IoT and use monitor from distance and constantly. So, but now that we're building with new materials, I think it's very important to constantly monitor it because I think, uh, yeah, all materials used should be great and have been proven in so many cases that they are great and that they can be
Yeah.
used. But there might be circumstances that have changed from all the the collective experience that
Yeah.
can lead to something. And that I think those things that we don't go into, they fall backwards into new building scandals that and actually maybe have to roll back a lot of the sustainability initiative that's been taken right now. I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I really hope that live monitoring of collecting data can
And
prevent.
are you guys involved in research studies or working with people who are looking at this data for those correlations? That's one of the reasons the Smart Building Collective was born, right? Is
Yeah,
to use these data sets and try and pull out new and interesting insights from them. How
yeah.
are you
I
doing that?
I think first of all, being a small team, we don't have a tremendous amount of time to sort of really engage hardcore in these things. But I think at least 10 universities are customers, and using our platform to collect data in some sort. I mean, almost all Danish ones, but we also have in the UK, in Norway, in Slovenia. I know that we also have customers from research institutes, also from Germany, I think. Yeah. So I think, yes, we are, but I'm not fully aware of how it's being used. It's just also they've sort of just identified our solution as a very good way of collecting data.
So
That's sort of
it's
the
a
main.
matter of watch this space, and we're going to see some nice things come out of it. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, me too. It's just yeah.
And
Very,
how do people follow your all's progress?
uh, like how people follow Woodsense's progress.
Yeah, how do they find you? How do they follow your progress?
Yeah,
Or
I
get in
mean
touch?
most. Yeah, I guess we try to be pretty active on LinkedIn. So yeah, give us a follow there. I think that's the best way of doing it. And then yeah, we also try to be really close with our customers. So if people sort of ping us and drop us an email or a phone call, we are still so small that like customer service is like number one goal for us. So having actually really being helpful in the process is also a big priority for us, especially as we're expanding to new markets and stuff like that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does 2024, 2025 look like? What are you guys hoping to achieve in the coming years? And I have another question here of smart buildings are in some ways kind of a state of a luxury product in a way. When do we expect to see these kinds of sensors in all buildings or in schools or in the ones that
Mm,
can't
yeah.
really?
Well, we're in plenty of schools as well.
Yeah.
But I think also Denmark is a luxury country. It's not all countries who have that amount of budget for to build a school. Um, so we're in schools as well, and other critical like childcare centers and stuff like that. Yeah, but and that's because basically we earn our money back. I mean, it's hard to say this part of the budget is goes to Woodsense and this we saved. That's not my job to do that sort of calculation, but I think proactive sort of or like modern building owners they know how to do so. They know that they can take the money from somewhere else. Um, but I think yeah, now that and that actually combines your question. One of the things we're going to do is I think we'll expand to the UK and open there. And I think they've just recently also had a lot of problems with schools because they've used a uh, different thin concrete material in the roofs, and sort of some of them have started breaking. So they
Oh
have sort
wow.
of they started emptying. So now a lot of I think hundreds of buildings, among others, many schools are empty right now because
Oh,
water over time has made them yeah, they're there's a big risk for them collapsing. So I think schools for us is one of the nicer
awful
things.
news.
Yeah.
That's not nice to
So
hear.
no, it's terrible. So for us, it's not a luxury product. I agree that if you look at room count sensors or CO2 measurements and stuff like that, that should be really important to school as well. But they have a tight budget in that thing. But I think in our case, because it's there's need to have products and there's nice to have products. And our wood moisture sensors was sometimes a nice to have product, but our flat roof monitoring is much more of a need to have. So it just sort of doesn't really matter which kind of building it is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
um, how should we see the pricing of it? How accessible is it?
It really changes. Yeah, I mean, basically our solution costs around €7 per square meter, like roof square meter, to install, and 1.5 to sort of maintain a year. So yeah, 7 up front and 1.5 yearly for 10 years. So that can become pricey. I mean, it can. I mean, €50,000 is quite some money. But for example, this hospital I was at here earlier, they bought us with the plan to have us for 10 years. And after 3 months, we found so many damages. They was like, yeah, now we're free rolling. Now we have 9 years and 9 months of something where the system is paid for, in the sense that, like, the damages that was prevented.
Yeah.
And also they asked us, okay, so can we one day build our own system around it instead of having this yearly fee? Can we just build our own system? I'm like, yeah, sure, that's okay. We can hand over the keys. It'll be, I think it was €8,000 a year for that building, which is a huge building. And they were like, okay, well then we don't build it. I mean, they were like,
we just wanted to know we just wanted to know we had the option.
yeah. And they were like, that's fair enough. I mean, it's obviously it's always annoying to have another cost on your maintenance budget, but I think it's also, if you take the problem size, I think it's a fair enough cost for, in our case.
But there's nothing like getting a text message or an email that says, let's nip this problem in the butt, before it becomes something big,
Yeah. So, but hopefully we can become cheaper in the long run. But that will, of course, be that would be nice for all. I think
that's the process, right? That's all about scaling and building it out.
Yeah.
Really nice, amazing solution you guys have built. Fantastic company. You guys are doing great work. It's nice to be a part of it and follow it. And I would encourage any researcher or PhD who sees this, who's studying this area, to get in touch with Woodsense, because they have some really nice data and some nice correlations to make. Thank you very much for your time. Any closing?
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you. It was a real pleasure, and we're really happy about being a part of this community as well. So that's great.
We always say we're also just getting started, right? I mean, there's so much work to be done. There's so many exciting things coming that even just taking this one topic and blowing that up and understanding its intricacies in sustainability and health, in ROI, in making sure that it's actually value for money, and that it's moving the enterprise. That's so important. And,
it's a big task you've taken upon yourself. I mean, I know, just understanding just such a small part of the industry has taken me several years to really fully understand, and I'm still learning every day. And then you have to understand much more.
Well, and that's why we built it the way we did, right? The Smart Building Collective certification is a crowdsourced certification. It's learning from companies like yourself to move the needle in different areas, and so we thank you as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
Take care. Have a good
You too.
day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, talk soon.